I never thought I'd be that guy. The one who finds out his marriage was a joke, who gets blindsided by betrayal, who ends up posting his life's mess online for strangers to pick apart. But here we are. My name's Mike, and I've been married to Lisa for 8 years. We have a son, Jake, he's 5. Up until a few weeks ago, I thought we had a solid marriage. Sure, we had our issues, but who doesn't? Lisa has a busy social life, a lot of work friends I never quite clicked with, but I chalked it up to different interests. I was the guy who preferred a night in, she liked to go out. Opposites attract, right? Then things started feeling off. Lisa had always been on her phone a lot, but now she was really on her phone, smiling at messages, turning the screen away when I walked by. She started coming home later from work, saying she was grabbing drinks with coworkers more often. Even in bed, there was this distance, like she was physically there but her mind was somewhere else. I wasn't trying to be paranoid, but something in my gut told me things weren't adding up. So I did something I never thought I'd do, I checked her phone. Locked, of course. I didn't push it further at first. Maybe I was just overthinking things. Then, last Friday, I got my answer in the worst way possible. I was at the grocery store when I ran into a mutual friend, Mark. He looked uncomfortable, almost guilty. After some awkward small talk, he said, "Hey, man. I saw Lisa downtown last night. With some guy." I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" Mark hesitated. "They were close. Kissing." I left my cart in the aisle and drove straight home. My hands were shaking the whole way. I needed proof. I couldn't just accuse her based on hearsay. So I went through our shared laptop, something she never thought to hide. And there it was. Photos. Messages. Proof. Lisa, kissing some guy at a bar, smiling like she didn't have a husband, like she didn't have a kid waiting for her at home. I took screenshots, saved everything to my phone, and waited. That night, when she walked through the door, I was sitting on the couch, her phone in my hand. She looked at me, then at the screen. Her face paled. "We need to talk," I said. Lisa froze in the doorway, her purse still slung over her shoulder. She glanced at her phone in my hand, then back at me, her face doing this weird mix of shock and calculation, like she was trying to figure out how much I knew before deciding on her next move. I wasn't in the mood for games. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. Lisa let out a nervous laugh, stepping further inside. "Mike, come on. You're seriously going through my phone now?" "That's..." I turned the screen toward her. The photo of her, lips locked with another man, stared back at her like a silent accusation. She stopped talking. A long pause stretched between us. Then she sighed, rolling her eyes like I had just caught her doing something mildly inconvenient, like forgetting to take out the trash, not wrecking our marriage. "Oh my God, Mike. It was just a kiss. It didn't mean anything." I felt my jaw tighten. "It didn't mean anything. Lisa, you were making out with another guy in a bar." She waved a hand, dismissively. "It was just some stupid thing. It was in public, for God's sake. If I was actually cheating, do you think I'd be dumb enough to do it where people could see?" I stared at her, trying to process the absolute insanity of what she was saying. "So because it was in public, it doesn't count?" I repeated, my voice dripping with disbelief. "Exactly," she said, crossing her arms. "It wasn't sneaky, it wasn't behind your back. It was just fun. That's all." I felt something inside me snap. I stood up, shoving the phone into my pocket. "You know what? I'm not doing this. I'm not standing here and letting you gaslight me into thinking I'm crazy for expecting basic respect in our marriage." She scoffed, shifting her weight. "Oh my God, Mike, don't be so dramatic. You're really going to throw away our whole life over one kiss? I turned on my heel and walked straight to our bedroom. I grabbed a suitcase from the closet and started tossing clothes inside. Behind me, Lisa's voice rose in pitch. Wait, what are you doing? I didn't even look at her. Leaving. For the first time that night, she actually seemed rattled. Mike, stop. You're being ridiculous. This is our home. No, Lisa, I said, zipping up the bag. It was our home. Until you decided to burn it down. I brushed past her, my heart pounding in my chest. She called my name, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I needed to get out. I made it to the front door before Lisa grabbed my arm. Not hard, not aggressively, just enough to stop me in my tracks. Her face had changed. The cocky dismissiveness was gone, replaced by something almost desperate. Mike, please. Don't do this, she said, her voice shaking just a little. I pulled my arm free. Do what, Lisa? Have some damn self-respect. She let out a frustrated sigh, running a hand through her hair. It was just a mistake, okay? A stupid, meaningless moment. You're really going to throw everything away over one kiss? I clenched my fists. It's not just a kiss, Lisa. It's the lies, the disrespect, the fact that you're standing here acting like I'm the crazy one. She swallowed hard, glancing toward the staircase, toward our son's bedroom. Mike, Jake's upstairs sleeping. You're really going to just walk out and leave your family over this? That one stung. I exhaled sharply, looking away. Don't you dare bring Jake into this like I'm the one breaking our family apart. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. Then stay. Let's talk about this like adults. You're acting on emotion right now, but we can work through this. I let out a bitter laugh. Work through what? Your version of marriage where you get to make out with other guys and I just smile and nod. She groaned, throwing her hands in the air. I said it didn't mean anything. You're acting like I slept with him. I turned to face her fully, my voice quieter but sharper. Would you have told me about it if I hadn't found out? Lisa hesitated. And that hesitation told me everything. I shook my head. That's what I thought. I grabbed my keys from the counter. I'm getting a hotel for the night. We'll talk about what happens next when I'm ready. Her eyes darkened. So that's it? You're just leaving. For now, I said. Because if I stay here any longer, I'm going to say something I can't take back. And with that, I walked out the door. I sat in my car for a while, just gripping the steering wheel and trying to process everything. My heart was still racing, my mind replaying the conversation with Lisa over and over again. The way she had brushed it off, tried to flip it on me, tried to use our son as some kind of emotional leverage. I wasn't just angry. I was done. I pulled out of the driveway and started driving. I didn't even know where I was going at first, just that I needed to get away. The idea of sleeping in our house, in the same bed where she probably laid after kissing that guy, made my skin crawl. Eventually, I checked into a cheap motel a few miles away. It was nothing fancy, just a place with a stiff mattress and a bathroom that smelled like bleach. But it was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could actually breathe. I stared at the ceiling, my phone buzzing every few minutes with messages from Lisa. I ignored them. Then, another text came through. This one wasn't from Lisa. It was from one of her coworkers. Hey man, I heard what happened. You deserved better. My stomach twisted. Lisa had told me it was just a kiss. That it didn't mean anything. But if that were true, why were people talking about it? I hesitated before responding. What exactly did you hear? A few minutes passed. Then. It's not my place to say. But if I were you, I'd get the full story before making any decisions. I stared at the message, my chest tightening. Lisa had already lied once. What else was she hiding? I stared at that message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the keyboard. Get the full story before making any decisions. What the hell did that even mean? Lisa had already admitted to the kiss. She tried to downplay it, tried to gaslight me into thinking it wasn't a big deal. But now, one of her own co-workers was reaching out, hinting that there was more to the story. My stomach twisted. I took a deep breath and typed back. Look, man, I just need the truth. If you know something, tell me. The 3 little dots appeared, then disappeared. Then again. Then gone. Silence. I clenched my jaw. Of course. People love to stir the pot but back out the second you press them for real information. Fine. If I wanted answers, I'd find them myself. I opened my laptop and logged into our shared phone plan account. It wasn't something I ever used, but Lisa and I were on the same plan, and I knew it listed call logs and text history. Not the content of the messages, but the timestamps, durations, and numbers. I pulled up Lisa's records. And my blood ran cold. One number kept appearing. Over and over. At all hours of the day. Long calls late at night when I was asleep. Quick ones in the morning right before she left for work. Calls that lined up perfectly with the nights she'd been working late or grabbing drinks with friends. And then I saw it, Friday night, the night she kissed that guy. A nearly hour-long call. To him. I didn't need to see the texts to know exactly what was going on. This wasn't some spur-of-the-moment thing like she claimed. This wasn't just a kiss. This was planned. This was deliberate. I sat back, my hands gripping my laptop. My breathing was shallow. My pulse was pounding in my ears. She had lied to my face. Repeatedly. And I had almost believed her. I closed the laptop and leaned forward, rubbing my hands over my face. My whole body felt hot with rage, but beneath that was something worse, humiliation. How long had I been the fool in this relationship? How long had she been sneaking around, whispering to some other guy while I was at home taking care of our son? I thought about confronting her again, but what was the point? She'd just lie. She'd twist things. She'd try to gaslight me all over again. No. If I was going to do this, I needed to be smart. I needed proof. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I called a private investigator. I didn't care about the cost. I didn't care if it seemed extreme. I needed to know the full truth, and if Lisa wasn't going to give it to me, I'd find it myself. Hey, I said when the investigator picked up. I need to find out if my wife is cheating on me. Hiring a private investigator wasn't something I ever imagined myself doing. It felt surreal, like I had stepped into some cheesy detective movie where I was the poor sap getting played. But at this point, I wasn't going to rely on Lisa's word. I met with the investigator, a guy named Jack, at a small coffee shop across town. He was older, maybe mid-50s, with a no-nonsense attitude that I appreciated. I laid everything out for him, the strange behavior, the excuses, the texts I wasn't allowed to see, and most importantly, the call logs connecting Lisa to some mystery guy. Jack nodded as he jotted notes. You got the guy's number? I slid my phone across the table. Yeah. It's all over her call history. He glanced at it, then tapped something into his laptop. I'll start with a reverse lookup, see if we can get a name. You want me to tail her too? I hesitated. This was already going further than I ever thought I'd go, but then I remembered that text from her coworker. Get the full story before making any decisions. I clenched my jaw. Yeah. I need to know everything. Jack nodded like this was just another day at the office. Give me a few days. The waiting nearly killed me. Lisa kept acting like nothing had happened. She still texted me, still called me, still tried to guilt-trip me into coming home. I ignored most of it. I needed to keep my distance. I needed proof. Then, 3 days later, Jack called. "We need to meet," he said. My stomach dropped. "That bad? I'll let you decide." I met him that evening at the same coffee shop. He had a folder sitting in front of him when I walked in. Without a word, he slid it across the table. My hands felt stiff as I opened it. And there it was. Photos of Lisa. With him. They weren't just holding hands or sneaking a kiss. They were comfortable together, the way two people get when they've been doing this for a long time. There was one of them laughing over drinks, another of them walking into a hotel. The timestamp on that one was from 2 weeks ago, when she told me she was at a girls' night. I swallowed hard, flipping through more pictures. Then I saw his face clearly for the first time. I froze. Jack must have seen my reaction. "You recognize him?" I clenched my fists. My whole body went rigid. Yeah, I recognized him. Because he wasn't some random guy. He was someone Lisa and I both knew. I stared at the photo, my fingers gripping the edge of the folder so tightly that the paper started to crumple. I knew him. Not just in passing. Not just as some guy Lisa worked with or an old college friend. No, this was someone who had been in our home. Someone I had shared meals with. It was Eric. My stomach twisted in disgust. Eric was part of Lisa's social circle, the one I never really fit into. He was one of her work friends, the kind of guy who always seemed too comfortable around my wife. He was charming, always joking, always finding ways to touch her arm when he talked. I noticed it, but I trusted Lisa. I trusted that she had boundaries. Guess that was my first mistake. I flipped through more photos, my pulse pounding in my ears. Jack exhaled. Yeah. I figured that might hit hard. I looked up at him. How long? Best guess. At least a few months. Maybe longer. He pointed to the timestamp on the hotel photo. That wasn't their first time sneaking off, I can tell you that. I clenched my jaw. My mind was racing, piecing together every moment that suddenly made sense. The late nights. The sudden interest in work events. The times Lisa had defended Eric whenever I voiced how I didn't like the way he acted around her. I had been played. Jack leaned back in his chair. I got more, if you can stomach it. I closed the folder. Just tell me, does she know that I know? Not yet, he said. But I'd bet she's nervous. She wouldn't expect you to go this far. That gave me a grim sense of satisfaction. Good. Let her sweat. I sat there for a long moment, trying to process everything. The rage, the humiliation, the sheer betrayal of it all. I wanted to confront her right then and there, to throw the photos in her face and watch her squirm. But then I thought about Jake. I thought about how messy this was about to get. I exhaled slowly. I need to be smart about this. Jack nodded. That's why you hired me. So, what's next? I looked down at the folder, then back at Jack. I build my case. And then I bury them. I drove back to the motel with my hands clenched on the steering wheel, my knuckles white. My mind was a storm of emotions, rage, disgust, humiliation, but beneath all of that was a cold, calculating clarity. Lisa and Eric thought they had gotten away with it. They thought I was just some clueless husband, oblivious to the affair playing out right under my nose. They were wrong. I wasn't just going to confront Lisa. I wasn't going to let her spin some half-assed excuse, gaslight me, or make me out to be the bad guy. No, I was going to make sure that when this blew up, it blew up in a way she couldn't recover from. And I knew exactly where to start. The next morning, I called my lawyer. I had never needed a lawyer before, but I had one on retainer through work. His name was Andrew, and after I gave him a rundown of the situation, he was quiet for a moment before sighing. "This is going to get ugly," he said. "I know," I said. "That's why I'm calling you now. I don't want to react emotionally, I want to be prepared." "Good," he said. "First, do not tell Lisa what you know yet. The moment she realizes you're planning for divorce, she'll start preparing her own strategy. You need to be ahead of her." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "Understood. I'll start drafting the paperwork," he continued. "But we need to discuss assets, custody arrangements, and any potential evidence that could give you the upper hand." That was my cue. I told him about the private investigator, about the photos, the call logs, everything. Andrew actually chuckled. "You came prepared. That's good, judges don't care about cheating unless you have hard proof." "You do." "Lisa doesn't know I have it," I said. "I want to keep it that way." "Then don't change your behavior," Andrew warned. "If she gets suspicious, she might start hiding money, deleting messages, or, worst-case scenario, trying to set you up for something." That thought made my blood run cold. "Like what?" "False abuse claims, getting you kicked out of the house, making you look unstable in front of the court. It happens more often than you think." I swallowed hard. "What do I do?" "Document everything," Andrew said. "Every interaction. Keep a calm, neutral tone when you talk to her. Install security cameras in your home if you can. And if she tries anything, you call me immediately." I exhaled. This was really happening. "Thanks, Andrew," I said. "I'll be in touch." I spent the rest of the day preparing. I bought a small voice recorder and kept it in my pocket at all times. I changed the passwords on my personal accounts and started securing any important documents, our marriage certificate, tax records, anything that could be used in court. Then, I went to the bank and opened a separate account. I didn't take all of our money, I wasn't stupid, but I made sure that if Lisa tried to drain our accounts when she realized what was happening, I wouldn't be left with nothing. By the time I got back to the house, I felt ready. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was planning. Lisa had no idea the storm that was about to hit her. By the time I pulled into the driveway, I had calmed down, not because I wasn't furious, but because I had a plan. Lisa would expect me to be emotional, erratic. That's how she manipulated situations. But I wasn't giving her that advantage. I stepped inside, and she was sitting on the couch, phone in hand. The second she saw me, her face lit up with false relief. "There you are," she said, standing up. "Mike, we need to talk." I dropped my keys on the counter and kept my tone neutral. "About what?" She frowned, probably thrown off by my calmness. "About us. About this." She gestured vaguely between us. "You just left, and you won't answer my calls. That's not fair." "Fair." The word almost made me laugh. I leaned against the counter, crossing my arms. "Okay. Talk." Lisa blinked, like she expected more of a reaction. "Mike, I know you're hurt, but you're overreacting. It was just one stupid mistake." I tilted my head. "A mistake?" "Yes," she said quickly. "It didn't mean anything. I was drunk, I got caught up in the moment, but it's not like I was sneaking around behind your back or anything." I just stared at her. The boldness of the lie almost impressed me. "Lisa," I said slowly, "if it was just one mistake, why are there months' worth of calls between you and Eric?" Her face went pale. I let the silence stretch between us, let her scramble to come up with an excuse. But she had nothing. What?" she finally stammered. I pulled out my phone, tapped on the call log I had saved from our shared phone account, and slid it across the counter to her. Go ahead. Explain. She looked down, saw Eric's number over and over, and let out a shaky breath. I don't know what this is. I don't remember calling him that much. I scoffed. Don't remember? Lisa, this isn't a handful of calls. This is hundreds. Morning, night, even when we were in bed together. Were you calling him while I was asleep? Her hands were shaking now. Mike, please. No, I cut her off. Don't, Mike, please, me. You've been lying to my face this whole time. And now, you're still trying to lie even when I have proof. Tears welled in her eyes. Normally, that would have gotten to me. Not anymore. I swear, it wasn't what you think, she whispered. I laughed coldly. Oh, really? Then tell me, Lisa, when you were sneaking off to a hotel with him 2 weeks ago, was that not what I think either? She froze. Bingo. Her mouth opened, then closed. Her whole body slumped like she had just realized the game was over. I grabbed my phone and pocketed it. Save your tears. I'm done. She stepped forward, reaching for me. Mike, please, we can work this out. We have a son. That hit a nerve, but I didn't let it show. I kept my voice steady. I'm not the one who threw this family away. You did. She wiped at her eyes, but I didn't care. I turned toward the stairs. I'm sleeping in the guest room. If you try to stop me, I'll call my lawyer. Lisa didn't say anything. For the first time since this all started, she had no more excuses. I had all the power now. And I wasn't done yet. I shut the guest room door behind me, locking it. I could still hear Lisa sniffling downstairs, probably trying to figure out her next move. But for once, I wasn't the one caught off guard. I had the proof. I had the plan. And now, I was in control. I sat on the edge of the bed, running through my next steps. Lisa was already panicking, and she hadn't even seen everything I had yet. I could tell she thought she still had a chance to smooth this over, maybe manipulate me into backing down. She was in for a rude awakening. The next morning, Lisa tried again. I walked downstairs to grab coffee, and there she was, sitting at the kitchen table with a fresh cup already poured for me. She looked rough, red eyes, hair a mess, but I wasn't about to fall for the performance. Morning, she said softly. I ignored her, grabbing my own mug and pouring my own coffee. She let out a shaky sigh. Mike, please. Can we just talk? Really talk? I took a sip of my coffee. Talk about what? You lying to me? You sneaking off with Eric? Or the fact that you still haven't told me the truth even after I showed you proof? Her lips trembled. I was scared, okay? I knew I messed up, but I didn't want to lose you. I shook my head. You already lost me, Lisa. The second you chose to betray me. She wiped at her face, frustrated. It wasn't like that. I never wanted to hurt you. I just. She stopped herself, clamping her mouth shut like she had almost said something she shouldn't. I narrowed my eyes. You just what, Lisa? She swallowed hard. It was complicated. I let out a sharp laugh. Oh, really? Because it looks pretty damn simple to me. You made a choice. You chose him over me. So own it. Her hands clenched into fists on the table. I didn't choose him. I never would have left you for him. Then why did you sleep with him? I shot back. She flinched. For the first time, she didn't deny it. She didn't try to spin some excuse or act like it wasn't what I thought. She just looked away, ashamed. And that? That was all I needed. I finished my coffee, set the mug down, and turned toward the stairs. I'll have my lawyer send over the divorce papers this week. Lisa shot up from her chair. Wait. Just give me a chance to explain. To fix this. I paused at the bottom of the stairs, looking back at her. Fix it? I repeated. Lisa, there's no fixing this. You didn't just cheat. You lied. You gaslit me. And if I hadn't caught you, you would have kept doing it. Tears ran down her cheeks. Mike, please. I shook my head. I deserve better than this. Jake deserves better than this. Then I walked upstairs, leaving her there. The next step was making sure she couldn't screw me over in the divorce. And I already had a plan for that. I wasn't naive. Just because Lisa was crying and begging now didn't mean she'd stay that way. She had been lying to my face for months, maybe even years, so the second she realized I wasn't falling for her act, I knew she'd shift tactics. I needed to stay ahead of her. That same afternoon, I met with my lawyer, Andrew, in his office. He had already drafted the divorce paperwork, but I wanted to make sure we were covering every angle. I want full custody of Jake, I said, not even hesitating. Andrew nodded. Given what we have so far, you've got a strong case. You have clear evidence of infidelity, which won't directly affect custody, but it helps establish character. If we can prove that her affair impacted her ability to be a responsible parent, the court will take it into account. I leaned forward. What about the house? The finances? Well, the house is in both of your names, but if you're the one leaving, you might have to fight to keep it. As for finances, you need to keep an eye on your shared accounts. If Lisa decides to drain them out of spite, you need records showing that. I nodded, already one step ahead. I moved my paycheck to a separate account yesterday. Andrew smirked. Smart. Now, here's what's important, do not move out of the house yet. That caught me off guard. Why? Because if you leave voluntarily, Lisa can argue that you abandoned the marital home. That could hurt your custody case. For now, you stay put. Be civil, be calm, and let her be the one who makes the mistake. I clenched my jaw. Staying in that house with her made my skin crawl, but I knew he was right. Andrew continued, also, keep documenting everything. If she tries to manipulate Jake, if she lashes out at you, if she starts badmouthing you to mutual friends, keep records. The more we have, the better. I exhaled. Got it. Now, Andrew said, flipping through some papers. One last thing. You said the guy she cheated with, Eric, he's married, right? I nodded. Andrew tapped his pen against the desk. Then you might have another card to play. I frowned. What do you mean? He smirked. You're not the only one whose life Lisa and Eric just wrecked. His wife deserves to know, don't you think? I sat back in my chair, considering it. Yeah. She did. And I knew exactly how I was going to tell her. I left my lawyer's office with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in weeks. Lisa thought she still had control over the situation, thought she could cry her way out of it, twist things in her favor. She had no idea what was coming. But first, there was something I needed to do. Tell Eric's wife. Finding her wasn't hard. Her name was Megan, and I remembered meeting her a few times at work events Lisa dragged me to. She was nice, quiet, and honestly, she always seemed a little uncomfortable at those gatherings, like she never really fit in with Lisa and her obnoxious group of friends. I didn't have her number, but I knew where she worked. A local marketing firm. So I did the thing Lisa and Eric probably never expected. I walked right into her office lobby. When I asked to speak with her, the receptionist gave me a skeptical look but paged her anyway. A few minutes later, Megan stepped out, looking confused but polite. Mike, she said, tilting her head. Is everything okay? I could have eased into it, softened the blow. But after everything I had been through, I wasn't in the mood for sugarcoating. "I'm sorry to do this like this," I said, pulling my phone from my pocket. "But I need to show you something." I handed her the phone with one of the photos from the private investigator, Eric and Lisa walking into a hotel together. Megan took it, her face shifting from confusion to something else. Something raw. Her fingers tightened around the phone. What is this?" I kept my voice calm. "It's exactly what it looks like." She scrolled through the photos, her breathing getting heavier. When she looked up at me again, her eyes were glossy with tears, but her jaw was set. "How long?" she asked, voice shaking. I sighed. "From what I found, at least a few months. Maybe longer." Megan let out a sharp breath, blinking rapidly. "That son of a bitch." She handed my phone back and crossed her arms, looking off to the side like she was trying to keep it together. After a moment, she exhaled and met my eyes again. "Thank you for telling me," she said, her voice steadier now. God, I knew something was off, but I never had proof." "I know the feeling," I said bitterly. She was quiet for a moment, then gave me a sharp look. "So, what are you going to do?" I didn't hesitate. "Divorcing her. Already got a lawyer. I'm going for full custody." Megan nodded slowly, like she was processing everything. Then, to my surprise, she let out a small, humorless laugh. "Well," she said, squaring her shoulders. "Looks like we're both about to ruin their lives." I smirked. "That's the plan." She pulled out her phone. "Send me the photos." "All of them." I did. And as I walked out of that building, I knew one thing for certain: Lisa and Eric weren't ready for what was coming. Megan didn't waste time. Less than an hour after I left her office, she called me back. Her voice was calm, almost eerily so, but there was an unmistakable edge to it. "I've got a plan," she said. I listened as she laid it out, and by the time she was done, I knew Eric and Lisa were about to experience the kind of fallout they never saw coming. The first domino fell at dinner that night. Lisa had been eerily quiet all day, probably sensing that I was slipping further away, but I played it cool, acting normal, just like my lawyer advised. I was in the kitchen when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Megan. "It's happening." I barely had time to process those 2 words before Lisa's phone, sitting on the counter beside me, started blowing up. One call. Then another. Then another. I glanced at the screen. Eric. Lisa rushed into the kitchen, snatching up her phone. The second she saw the missed calls, her face went pale. She turned her back to me, pressing the phone to her ear. "Hey," she started, then froze. I watched her shoulders go stiff, her free hand gripping the edge of the counter. Whatever Eric was saying on the other end, it was bad. "Good." She mumbled something, then hurried toward the back door, stepping outside to take the call in private. I waited a few seconds, then followed, making sure to stay just out of sight. "How did she find out?" Lisa hissed, her voice low but frantic. I could barely hear Eric's response, but I caught the words photos and proof. Lisa let out a shaky breath. Okay. Maybe we can." She stopped. I could only assume Eric was explaining the full extent of the damage, because Lisa suddenly collapsed onto the patio chair, pressing a hand to her forehead. "Are you serious?" she whispered. Pause. "God damn it, Eric." I bit back a smirk. Megan had delivered. Lisa stayed outside for another 5 minutes, muttering frantically into the phone. By the time she came back in, her face was flushed, and her hands were trembling. I leaned against the counter, sipping my water. "Everything okay?" She jumped, clearly startled that I was standing there. Yeah. Just a work thing." I almost laughed. She didn't even realize I knew. I just nodded, letting her stew in the mess she had created. Meanwhile, Megan and I were already working on the next step. Eric was about to lose everything. His wife had wasted no time blasting their affair to everyone, his friends, his family, even his boss. And because Megan was smart, she didn't just tell them. She showed them. She sent the pictures. The call logs. The proof. And since Eric and Lisa were co-workers, that meant HR got involved, too. I got a text from Megan later that night. Eric got pulled into a meeting with HR this afternoon. Word is, he might lose his job. I read it twice, letting the satisfaction settle deep in my chest. Lisa had no idea yet. And I wasn't going to tell her. Not until it was too late. The next morning, I woke up early, feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks, calm. Lisa, on the other hand, she looked like she hadn't slept at all. She sat at the kitchen table, gripping her coffee mug like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. Her eyes were puffy, and she kept glancing at her phone like she was expecting bad news. Which, of course, she was. I played my part, acting like I didn't notice. I made myself breakfast, sat across from her, and scrolled through my phone while she suffered in silence. Her phone vibrated, and I saw her flinch before she picked it up. She read the message, then let out a slow, shaky breath. I sipped my coffee, waiting. Finally, she set her phone down and looked at me. "Mike, we need to talk." I raised an eyebrow. "About what?" She swallowed. "About Eric." I barely held back a smirk. "Here we go. What about him?" I asked casually. Lisa hesitated, like she was still trying to decide how much to tell me. Finally, she let out a nervous laugh. "Well, Megan found out. And she kind of overreacted." I almost choked on my coffee. Overreacted? I set my mug down. Overreacted how? Lisa bit her lip. She told his boss." I stared at her, feigning surprise. "No shit?" She let out an exasperated sigh, rubbing her temples. "Yeah. And now Eric might lose his job." I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. "Sounds like a him problem." Lisa's head snapped up. "Mike, this is serious. He has a family. A career. She's trying to ruin his life." I tilted my head. "Kinda like how you and Eric tried to ruin mine." She paled. "That's not fair." "Oh, it's not." I interrupted, my voice sharp now. "Lisa, do you have any idea how ridiculous you sound? You're sitting here, feeling sorry for Eric because he's facing consequences for his own actions." She blinked, stunned at my tone. I didn't think it would go this far." I let out a humorless laugh. "Yeah. Well, maybe you should have thought about that before screwing a married man." Her lips trembled, and for the first time, I saw something new in her expression. Fear. Not just of losing me. Of losing everything. Her voice was barely above a whisper. Are you going to do the same to me?" I held her gaze for a long moment. Then, with a smirk, I stood up, grabbed my coffee, and walked out of the room. I didn't need to say anything. She already knew the answer. Lisa knew she was screwed. I could see it in the way she moved around the house, quiet, jittery, avoiding eye contact. She wasn't eating much, barely speaking unless it was about Jake, and even then, her voice was small, uncertain. She was waiting for me to strike. And she didn't have to wait long. 2 days later, my lawyer filed the divorce papers. Lisa got served at home, and I made sure to be sitting on the couch when it happened. She opened the envelope with trembling hands, eyes scanning the document before she looked up at me. "You're really doing this?" she whispered. I sipped my coffee. "Yeah, Lisa. I am." Tears welled up in her eyes. Mike, please. Let's go to therapy. Let's try. I raised an eyebrow. You want therapy now? After months of lying? After sneaking around with Eric? I made a mistake, she sobbed. I don't want to lose you. I set my mug down and leaned forward. Lisa, you didn't just make a mistake. You made choices. Repeatedly. You lied, you betrayed me, and the only reason you're sorry now is because you got caught. She broke down completely, but I felt nothing. The courtroom battle was brutal, but I won. I got majority custody of Jake. Lisa fought hard for 50-50, but the evidence I had, her affair, her lies, her emotional manipulation, tipped the scales in my favor. The judge saw through her performance. As for finances, my lawyer ripped through her arguments like a knife through butter. I protected my assets, and Lisa got barely anything in the settlement. But the final nail in the coffin? Her job. Remember how Eric was under investigation at work? Turns out, his relationship with Lisa wasn't just an affair, it was a violation of company policy. And when HR started digging, Lisa got caught in the mess too. Both of them got fired. I didn't even have to lift a finger. She spiraled fast after that. No job, no money, no husband. She moved into a small apartment, and while I never kept Jake from her, she hated that she had to come to my house to pick him up for visits. Meanwhile, I was free. One night, months after the divorce was finalized, Lisa texted me. Lisa, do you ever think we could fix things? Even as friends? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I blocked her number.